Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. Now, what have we got for you lovely lot today? Well, it's another one in my inspiration series, and this time it's probably one of the greatest of them all, Mr. JMW Turner. Not to be confused with BMW Turner, which is an automotive company in Twickenham. So we're going to be having a go at this fairly simple watercolour inspired by the great man himself. Now, just before we start, I'd like to put my serious hat on just for a moment. Now, I'd like to tell you about a scam which is going around at the moment. Now, a lot of you will know about this already from other YouTube art channels. So basically what's happening is if you leave a comment in the comments section, you'll get a reply suggesting that you've won a competition. Now, it's all a big scam. So what they're hoping that you'll eventually do is send them some money to pay for the shipping for the prize. Now, I've been through all the comments and I've deleted all the ones I can find, but if you do get one, or if it's one I've missed, just ignore it or report it. So please, please, please do not send them anything. We would never ever ask you for any money. It really does make me very cross, because you think of all the effort and time these people put into this. Why don't they get themselves a proper job? Anyway, enough of that. Come and join me and we'll paint this step by step together. Well, I don't think Turner needs much of an introduction. He was one of the all-time greats in all mediums, with more than 550 oil paintings, 2,000 watercolours, and over 30,000 works on paper. It just makes me feel very lazy. Now, if you haven't seen this film, I would highly recommend it, with an amazing performance by Timothy Spall as the man himself. Now, this painting of the Fighting Temeraire has got to be one of my favourite of all times. It hangs in the National Gallery in London and I can stand and stare at it for hours. And you can see why he was known as the painter of light. Now, I've recently bought this book of his watercolours, and it ranges from highly detailed finished paintings to some really quick loose sketches. And this simple watercolour of Gloucester Cathedral really caught my eye and thought it would make a great basis for a tutorial. Okay, so for today's materials, my paper is some Hahnemühle. It's 100% cotton, 300 pound, nice and thick, cold press paper. It's on a block, so won't need stretching, but any decent watercolour paper will do. And today's colours: cadmium yellow and orange, yellow ochre, cobalt blue, magenta, burnt umber and burnt sienna, and some Payne's grey, 4 brushes from my range, a mop, 3/4 inch flat, number 12 round, and of course my trusty number 3 rigger. So here is the pencil sketch, nice and simple, so no drawing template needed today. Off we go! And as usual, wetting the sky area with clean water using my mop brush. Now, I'm often asked how long to leave it before applying the paint. Well, let the water soak totally into the paper for about 20 seconds. Just make sure you haven't got any puddles, but none of the paper is left dry. So if you look at Turner's original, it's quite a colourful sky. So, in with various mixes of cadmium yellow and cadmium orange. And I'm using my flat brush for this. Here's some Payne's grey with quick sweeping broad strokes. Not too much fiddling. And here a touch of cobalt blue. Not too many strokes or it'll turn green. And this is a 50-50 mix of the magenta and cobalt blue, but any purpley colour will work well. All still going into a very wet wash. Next, I'm just picking up my pad and tilting it at an angle of about 45 degrees to get a little movement in the clouds. And you can see the sheen here where it's still wet. So the sky is still in its damp stage, but I'm painting in the hill here, hoping to get a nice soft edge into the sky. And this is a fairly strong mix of Payne's grey and cobalt blue. Now I'll come back and paint the cathedral later, but nice and flat along the bottom edge. And I've added in a touch of purple colour into the mix. Now here, while it's still wet, a few small drops of clean water to force a few backruns. Now when it's dried, you can see here those lovely effects. It really is my favourite bit. Now for the foreground, and I'm pre-wetting the bank here, hoping to get a real Turner-esque textured effect. All using fairly muted colours here of burnt sienna, burnt umber, yellow ochre and Payne's grey, letting them all mix and blend directly on the paper. Lots of water, lots of pigment, just splash it all around and let the paint do its thing and let it work for you. Now for these darker values, and I'm using a much thicker and creamier consistency of paint, but still going in wet in wet. Still damp here with some Payne's grey splats. Dollops of clean water for some force back runs. And now let's sprinkle in a few granules of table salt, just sparingly into the foreground. Now I'm sure this wouldn't be the way Turner worked, and I feel confident that he didn't use salt. In fact, I'm sure he didn't use Daniel Smith paints either. However, he was known to have spat at his paintings, but I think I'll spare you that experience. So now it's time to let this totally dry. So it's a perfect time for a short break and a glass of... Now, well, did you know that Turner often drank a couple of pints of rum within a day? So next I'm just knocking back some of the white area here with some Payne's grey. Next, with my number 3 rigger, some grassy details, lots of short dabby strokes, lifting the brush off the paper just to get these nice tapered ends. Definitely something to practice on some scrap paper, because it's a great lesson in brush control. Now for the cathedral, and I'm using my big brush with a mixture of Payne's Grey and Cobalt Blue. And the important thing is to wet the bottom of it so it blends subtly into the bank. And perhaps a touch more blue. Now I've added a little more detail into the cathedral than there is in the original, just to make it a little bit more of my own. Dragging out here a few details with the wooden end of my brush. Now there's a suggestion of a line of dark trees along the bank here, so these are going in with some Payne's Grey. Now they're looking just a bit obvious, so I'm blurring them slightly with some clean water spray. Now back to the cathedral, and it's just a little bit wide here on both sides, so I'm just lifting out with a damp brush. Now let everything totally dry. Then I'm going to paint in those lovely cloud details, and I've sprayed the paper to get some soft and some hard edges, as Turner does in his skies. And this is the purple mix again. Here just a touch of Cobalt Blue, and here with some Cadmium Orange, but with a real light touch with every brush stroke. Final stage, a little softening and blurring with a damp tissue, and you have to work a little harder when you're using cotton paper than you do with the pulp-based papers. So I think we're done. Just my little tribute to a wonderful artist. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and you'll give it a go. It's quite a nice easy one, and try to limit yourself to doing it in about 2 hours. And as always, please don't forget to like, subscribe if you haven't already. It is free. Leave a comment. I do read every single one, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. And happy Christmas if you do celebrate it. Cheers for now. All the best.